Welcome to Florida Political Review. This is one of our candidate exclusives with a Q&A with candidate former State Senator Audrey Gibson. Welcome, Senator Gibson. So first, will you tell us a bit about yourself and your connections to Jacksonville?
Well, thank you so much for the invitation for the interview as I plow forward and create a shift in Jacksonville for the office of mayor. And I was born and raised in Jacksonville, spent some years in Southern California after I graduated from, sorry about this, but I'm not sorry, Florida State University in criminology. And so as I was turning back and forth to home, I grew up on the north side. My parents were Ernest and Lois Gibson, to professionals, educators, and as well, my mother was a retired dean from in health programs from Florida State College, what used to be called Florida Junior College. And it's had another name in the middle, I just can't remember. And so I just was always engaged in my community, particularly so when I returned from Southern California. And in between returning, I just noticed that things were just not changing very much in certain communities, particularly in minority communities. And so I started to raise my voice a little bit and attend community meetings. And one of my friends said, I said, well, why are you guys not moving forward? She said, well, they won't let us. I go, well, who's the they? And so I just kept raising a ruckus. And she said, well, maybe you should run for office. And I said, well, maybe I should. And I did that. I first ran for city council in Jax. I lost by about 300 votes after being here like 9 months back permanently. Yeah, small. And then a legislative seat came open for the Florida House, and I ran for that seat, and I won by over 2,000 votes. So thus began my political career, but not my community service career, which I've always been a community servant. And I see myself as a community servant anyway, even in my role as a former member of the House, where I served for 8 years. And then there was a special election for the Senate seat in 2011. So I only missed one session in 20 years. And I won that seat as well. And I just finished my term, my final term at the November election in 2022.
Wonderful, yeah. Well, it is very clear whenever we read the campaigns that you are a veteran legislator, serving in the Florida Senate since 2011, your experience in the Florida House as well. So very experienced, very influential veteran legislator in Florida. And I guess the next thing goes on to, qualifications. Yeah, and one of the important things in this race is the fact that out of 8 qualified candidates, you're one of 4 females running to be Jacksonville's next mayor. So I have to ask you, how does the title Madam Mayor sound to you? How does your historic candidacy make you feel?
I feel the same way about all governing, right? Regardless of the title, it's all about the people. It's great to be among 3 other women running, and I think that it speaks to the shift that I talk about, a change in the cultural dynamics in Jacksonville, and a change in the mindset dynamics, some of it forced just because of population shifts. But I believe that we have to look at the office of mayor differently, and it shouldn't be just a good old boys position, but all inclusive.
Most definitely, and it's very historic because we are making the transition from a traditionally male-dominated post and into 4 qualified, very qualified female candidates, and very exciting for this selection cycle as well. So moving on to more agenda-specific questions. I see a lot of your priorities on your website, particularly, and align with some hot topic issues in the city of Jacksonville. And first, I want to start with housing crisis. As we know, a lot of people are moving to Florida, a very attractive state, but unfortunately, it makes a lot of issues for cost of living, which is already an issue with inflation. So as we know, the population is growing, more people moving to the state. Jackson was one of those attractive cities. Uh, but at the same time, cities like Jacksonville are making housing more difficult and resulting in this cost of living crisis. So, what would be one of your solutions as mayor?
And let's talk about what when we're talking about affordable housing, which is where I think we're going. Uh, Affordable housing can be rental as well, and I think that's where we're seeing the most cost increase, even though property owners have also seen a rise in insurance, property insurance costs. And so I know that probably apartment owners are seeing the same raises in property insurance costs, and they want to adjust the rent to accommodate that. The difficulty is the income of the folks paying the rent and those generally paying a house payment is not matching to the increase in the property insurance market. So therein lies the problem. So I believe that in many cases, the apartment owners can make reasonable adjustments to make up for an increase in property insurance rates. But I prefer to see what that looks like. What's the percentage increase in the property insurance rate as compared to the 3 times increase in the cost of rent? I'm not sure it matches. And so, in terms of dealing with, the legislature should have included apartment owners in their property insurance, special session 1, 2, 3, 4, I think where we're at now. And if they did not do that, shame on them. I raised the issue before I left the Senate, doing the survey, I did a rental survey of constituents as well as a mortgage payment survey. And we're looking at 3 times the rent in 3 times the rent increases in a very short time frame, where people cannot they can't catch up. So in terms of buildup of affordable housing in Jacksonville, I have responded to this question many times on many surveys, and I believe that infill can help us with affordable housing in some of our neighborhoods that continue to not be what they should be in terms of economic development. And so in those communities, some of them are older, you find more abandoned properties or vacant lots. And I believe that we can, it's infill. I think everybody kind of gets that term, where instead of going somewhere and building a whole new community, you fill in where there are gaps in an existing community. And from that perspective, though, I think that the city has to rein in the cost there too, because some investors, and thank you investors, but no thank you for the rent gouging, uh, are buying up the property that I believe the city should be purchasing. I know they gave some funding to an entity, I believe it was last week, to build affordable housing, but I believe you have to have some parameters on it. So once you build it, there should be an expectation of a specific cost, right, for rent, and how often and in what intervals that rent can be increased. And we have to protect the people that we're having the folks build the affordable housing for. And so my last thing on that is, I believe that the city could position itself, and I'm exploring all of these ideas, because sometimes we don't think most times if you don't think out of the box, think what's possible, then you never do it. And that is the city buying up some of this land and auctioning off the properties in groups. Maybe there's 2 at a time or 3 at a time. And then making sure there are parameters with those individuals or companies that buy, so that people can actually afford to live and stay in the housing that we're incentivizing them to build.
That's right. That's right. And it's become, more of a hot topic issue as more people move to Florida and things like that. But as another, moving on to our next question, as another caveat of living in Florida, we probably have heard a lot of the changes being made to public education as another, public issue. And actually, you may have been at the forefront of this last year, whenever the first set of bills about parental rights were coming to fruition. So, moving to this more social issue, this topic has taken quite a spot on the national stage, and even in this mayoral campaign, which we referenced the candidate forum, all the candidates had a couple months ago, where you, along with others, mentioned that although the mayor is not directly involved in school board issues, it's like a separate body, funding for students should be a priority. So do you have anything else to say on the matter of school choice in Jacksonville, or where parental rights should stand in the city of Jacksonville?
Well, all parents have rights. That was my whole thing when we were debating the bill. That all parents have rights anyway. It's in statute. It's in the guidelines in the Department of Education, and so the parental rights was never an issue. And the bill, which all it did was say what we had was age appropriate in there. You see age appropriate in the legislation that came up last year, or was it a year before? Time goes by so fast. And so all that happened was under the age of, or under the grade of, nothing below third grade, but it still kept age appropriate. So it was just a mixed bag and totally unnecessary, because I believe that the whole idea is to attack people, to attack people in the LGBTQ community, to attack African Americans on book banning. It's all been very negative, to divide us, basically, because that's what happens when strong, let me see how I can characterize it, strong feelings about certain things, people or certain individuals, in this case the governor, they find that place and then they just pick at it and pick at it and pick at it to divide us. And that is, I believe, is wrong. And parents have always had rights about what happens with their kids in school. In terms of choice, choice exists, but just saying we're going to only do choice and we're not going to have traditional public schools, which is what will end up, because when the average daily attendance decreases, then you can't fund that school. And I believe that when you kill a school, you kill a community and a neighborhood, because people with kids have to get their kids to school before they go to work. And killing a community is really detrimental to our city. And that's the way I see it.
That's right. As more and more attention is being brought to public schooling, the manner of funds also becomes a way of advocating for public schools as well. I just want to say I'm a public school kid as well. I like my public school. I'm actually a county over. I'm in Baker County. It's like more rural. Well, we were just so close to Jacksonville, and I did live near Jacksonville as well, and so it's been very close. But there are a lot of topics that are very nearby and close to to most of us as well. And I guess with that being said, and one of the last social questions that we have is the matter of public safety, because in a manner of and also in the forum, and a lot of the priorities for mayoral candidates is the public safety in Jacksonville. The manner that some people, as one candidate, I think it was Alfararo, like you can't even go outside sometimes. You can't. It's a little too dangerous, to better be safe than sorry in certain areas of the city. So no argument, crime has risen throughout the nation, and so does in Jacksonville. So what would be your priorities for improving public safety in the city? It's a big city after all.
Well, I think the issue really is about gun violence. And so when individuals, I said this the other night at a forum, when he was at crime, crime is a big umbrella, right? So folks are not talking about robberies. They're not talking about anything right now as it relates to crime, except for gun violence. It's very specific. The I start this way. First, the eradication of gun violence really is a community affair. Obviously, the sheriff is the top law enforcement officer, but people see things, people know things in the community, and I think they're reticent to say anything. And part of that is because of retribution, and they don't feel safe saying something. So one gun, I learned this from our state attorney, who's retiring, but one gun, she said, turns over in the community multiple times. Sometimes people don't lock their cars and they leave a gun in the car and the gun gets stolen. That's a gun on the street in the community that it goes from person to person to person to person until law enforcement either finds the weapon or finds the perp, right? So people need to lock their cars, but they all, and I understand nobody should steal, but don't leave your gun in your car, even if you lock it. It's just on the seat, in the glove box. That helps to perpetuate. It's not your fault, technically, but it helps to perpetuate the entree of guns into the community when you do that. I said to parents, and some parents live in fear in their home too, though. That's another thing, and they need help too. And we have to figure out how we can encourage them to come forward, make it safe to do so. That is a concern too. And look in the closets, look under the beds, look in the backpacks. Most people, they know there's a gun in that house, right? So that's why I call it a community. It's a community affair to be able to deal with the gun violence. You can now we have permitless carry, although they're saying, oh, but you still have to do the background check, but still, it's a almost a ding in trying to track back maybe a gun that was stolen, because some people don't even report the gun stolen. So then that's another issue. And so the solution, or the part of the solution, is within every house, every household, knowing who the friends are. You got to do the search, even if you have an idea that there may be a gun, or your child's friend maybe has a gun. You got to talk to parents. We have to talk to each other. And the public affairs issue for me is, back in the day, we used to say it's 10 o'clock. I think we did it 10 o'clock. Well, it was 11 o'clock news then. Now we have like 4 or 5, 10, 11, 12. It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? That. I believe something like that is a very simple thing. But it's 11, it's 10. We're gonna start at 10 since we have 10 o'clock news. It's 10 o'clock. Is your vehicle locked? I don't know if we want to say, is your gun locked? But something like that to give more awareness to the community is how we're going to get through this. There is no other way.
Especially that was an important topic. I seem to miss actually the gun violence crisis, and it is ever more relevant, sadly, in that regard as well.
And it's our young people too. It's not, I mean, most of the time we hear it's younger and younger. And Jacksonville, I forgot that this part. Jacksonville's average age is like 37, which is pretty young. And so I believe that the rashes have occurred because of the age, the youngness of age, and then we're getting a little bit older in waves, and so there's kids behind that age range, and so we still have a younger cycle to go through because if we're average age is 37, so we have to figure out a way to deal with it. And there's no more fist fights, right? There's no more fist fights, which is unfortunate. Just go grab a gun or ask your friend for a gun. Hey, can you go give me a gun? That's where we are right now. So we need prevention, and we're gonna have to do intervention and come together as a community to keep our community safe from gunfire.
Of course, of course. And well, I guess moving on as well to an overall question. So the state of the race that we got so far. Um, so far the polls have consistently shown another Miss Deegan as leading the race, but it's not very clear who's going to be the second place finisher, and it looks more and more often that a runoff election will take place. So just being said, this is a state of the race. Elections a month out, and after considering all of the candidacies and all the other candidates, what would you say that your campaign and what issues that you bring to the table, what makes you the best candidate? What distinguishes you from the other candidates?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen any polls since late last year, right? It's February, going to be March. And the only poll I'm concerned about is one on election day. That one. That's the one that I'm focused on. And so as far as I'm concerned, the race is very much still up in the air. Who's gonna be the two that first and second, or who will be the one that takes it all. There's that possibility as well. It's all about turnout. And so what was the other part of your question?
Right. So it was what distinguishes you, we're a month out. What distinguishes you in your campaign, your issues in comparison to other candidates. So what makes you the best option?
Well, basically the issues are everybody asks pretty much the same question, every questionnaire, every interview, it's all pretty much the same. It's all pretty much the same question. That the other side, I would say, of the question is, what do you bring in your knowledge base, in your experience, to make a plan for the answer to those questions? Do you have governing experience? Do you have policy experience? Because folks have asked me, well, how does it translate? I said, I understand. I have the budget experience, years and years of it. I've been on all the budget committees there are, including Transportation, Economic Development, Appropriations, which is what really the meat of what we're trying to do in Jacksonville is to build economic development and be inclusive and create unity and get our infrastructure straight, our sidewalks and close ditches and those things in our marginalized communities, and bring more small businesses, is my plan. Bring more small businesses into those communities that are locally owned, and which then keeps the money circulating in that community and then increases the economic development there. So it's talk is talk, but walking is walking. And I've walked the walk for years, and not just in my sole district, which my Senate district was just about half of Jacksonville, but I help anybody anywhere. I didn't care where they live. So I can speak out though, for or against, as mayor, for or against policy that the city council decides to do, which we haven't had much speak out from the mayor's administration over the years, actually. When you can do that, I want to make sure that the office of mayor, I'm opening the doors to the office of mayor for accessibility. Many of the meetings that are held at times when people work. So I want to make sure that I'm setting times when I can meet with community stakeholders, and not the usual ones who always get to come, but the general public, those who feel left out and not so powerful. those are the folks that I want to talk to. And so I believe my campaign is on track. I have definitely been elected before and have actually the longest and most experience of any candidate in this race.
That's right, and you are by far one of the more experienced candidates in this race as well. And I actually just wanted to highlight, one of your terms from your website, and it's precisely what it says. So like, it's just Jacksonville has a strong mayor system. So you put strong mayor, strong city that leans in together on issues. So very interesting ideas, Senator Gibson. Um, and by all means, best of luck and your campaign, and the rest of this candidacy. I'm sure everyone gets very busy as well. So just to conclude, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I'm hoping you will answer some fun questions for us. We have three. So the first one, to alleviate from the hot political ones that divide and everything. One of the more important questions we have, we're a student publication, Florida Political Review. We're all written by students, supported by the Center of Public Service in the University of Florida. So we always ask this question. We're like, and to all candidates, and what would you say is your message to Florida students?
My message to Florida students as mayor is that we need to plan in this community as though the next generation will be taking over. Not plan for just today, but for the future. Because, we're all already older. And so if we only plan for today, then what does the future generation, what do they have to inherit, if you will? There should be a basis for that generation to continue to move forward, not have to go back and try to fix neighborhoods, make neighborhoods better that should have happened already. They should be able to add more economic development and more planning and more resiliency to that community, as opposed to trying to start from scratch. They shouldn't have to think about, wow, we need infill because we don't have enough housing for people, and we're fighting against rent gouging. All of those signs. I believe that we should leave the city in a way that the next generation can pick up and continue that. The future is what it's all about. What was the other part of your question?
Oh no, that was basically yeah. But that it's always like passing the torch to younger generations. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, when it's time.
Of course. And
your education, as you all continue your education, is very important. And for Jacksonville, the changes in demographics is very important for all you young generation folks who live in Jacksonville, to keep that in mind too, for inclusiveness, which is very important, and unity, because you cannot be a major modern city when people are at each other's throats, when people are left behind, and when there's no thought process of planning and moving the city forward, particularly in tourism. I believe we need to find ways to increase our tourism in Jacksonville, so that when folks go to, like NASCAR coming up next Sunday, Daytona, they stop here and they spend more than one night or something like that, which increases our tourism. And when they're going to see Mickey, we want to make sure they want to stop here in Jacksonville, for those who are traveling this way, to spend some time and money in Jacksonville and increase our tourism pot.
Okay, so Jacksonville is a pretty big place. It's a huge city, and actually it's the largest city in the continental United States. So, I'm sorry, by square miles. Yes, of course. So what would you say? And I'll give you, this is like two prongs. So what would you say is your favorite place in the city? So where's your place you really like to be? And secondly, we have a lot of good food in Jacksonville. So
Oh,
to narrow it down, what would be your favorite place to eat in Jacksonville? Or for
I
lunch?
can't, I don't want to make anybody upset.
Okay.
Where
You
I
can
go,
decide. You can decide.
I can tell you I love Italian and I love Mexican food.
Hmm.
Uh,
Good choice.
and so anyway, and what was the question before that?
Right. So what's your favorite
Oh,
place in the city? You know,
oh,
it's huge. So, if you had a favorite place to be, what would it be?
first of all, I'm a homebody. I'm an I'm an extrovert with no, I'm introvert with extrovert tendencies. So home is where the heart is for me. But I like to go. I actually enjoy going to the Jacksonville Zoo and the museum. Um, I don't do a lot of going out, so yeah, that's a pretty mild for me. I love the baseball games though. That's my favorite. When the former Suns, now the Jumbo Shrimp,
Yeah.
play.
Yep, yep. I
I
think
love to
so.
go. Yeah, I love to go to the. That's my number one. I should say. I love to go to the baseball games. It's such a It's a great experience. It's fun. It's not super expensive and lots for the kids too. So that's my favorite is going to the baseball games.
Very nice, very nice. Me
Go
personally,
Jags, go Jags too, but I
oh,
just love.
you just spoiled my next question. But I would just say, I used we go to Jacksonville all the time, and because we're so close, and I always liked before they tore it down, the Jacksonville Landing. I love the Jacksonville
Uh,
Landing when it was there. Um, the St. John
River.
River, they had Friendship Fountain. I love that place. It was beautiful. Jacksonville has a lot of stuff. It's huge.
It does, and they have some plans for the riverfront that were presented last week. I went to the Riverfront 2025. Go visit the website and see what the plans are.
Okay.
It's very nice there. I used to go to the landing back in the day, but I still the baseball games are still number one
Of
for
course, of course, of course. And lastly, Super Bowl was yesterday, so this is very relevant, as we all
me.
know.
Oh,
What could have been, a Jags Super Bowl. So it's just amazing. I've asked this to other candidates as well. So how we went from, and depending if you're a football fan, we went from like this, disappointment, trash last year. Just be honest, with like, terrible form, and we had like a losing streak to this year. This season was just amazing. We almost made it to the Super Bowl. Um, so I don't know. You have any comments on the Jags? Next season, what can we expect? What are your opinions?
well, the leader is important. It's the same for our city. The Who's the coach made a big difference in the Jaguars. So in how they played, they were unified. That's important uh, for a mayor to make sure they can unify people. It's like that team. They were successful because they were unified. They were also successful because they have a new strategic, deliberate, and analytical coach. A mayor needs to be strategic, analytical, and deliberate as the leader of the city. I said that in an interview last week. Someone said, well, do you need to be told what to do? Or I'm like, nobody tells me what to do because I am deliberate. I am analytical. I'm very data driven and I'm very deliberate. And so the Jaguars team, just in 1 year, were able to make a turnaround because of who the leader was and how he galvanized them together so they could be unified and move forward. That's the key to their success. And that'll be the key to the success of Jacksonville as a strong city.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, no, great. And also with that in mind, I guess that it also applies here, you know. We're looking forward to the next season, you know, or term, whenever it starts as well. All right,
Yes.
so to conclude our very interesting interview and our conversation, Senator Gibson, thank you so much. He's gonna give some information for our readers. Um, Jacksonville's consolidated government uses a unitary election system outside the national and statewide election cycle. So while candidates are partisan and campaign with their party, every candidate runs together in the same primary election, which will take place on March 21st, 2023. Any candidate who reaches majority support will win the mayorship outright. Otherwise, the top two candidates move on to a general runoff election on May 16th, 2023.